Okay, Mario, we discussed the importance of fear in religion. What is your opinion on this subject?
Hi Robert, that's so interesting subject, especially fear in general for me. You know that I'm not so hardcore religious like maybe other people. So I was studying fear and the influence of the fears, many fears in our lives, and actually my conclusion was that fears don't have any big importance except maybe surviving. When you look at the level of nature, fears from the nature, and what are two innate fears in the nature and in our lives as well. That's the fear of falling and the fear of loud sounds. So they are just the fears to helping us stay alive. So other fears, which I find kind of developed through the society and our understanding, starts with the assumption that we do something wrong or something bad, right? And I find them connected with the concept of sin. So if you do something wrong, that is sin, and you will be punished. I find after all my exploring and studying other concepts in life, I find that all those fears, except that innate two, are just imposed on a person through the mind and concepts of the mind and society. So my opinion is that all those other fears than that innate two keep us from exploring the life in full and gaining our personal experiences, especially if we talk on a higher level than just religion. In religious views, I can tell that fear limits our free will. It's kind of opposed to our free will because it projects some bad consequences. So it's not real. It projects some consequences which should happen if we choose some other option, or one option which is maybe not favorable from religious perspective. So in my opinion, fear detaches us from the present moment, because it's projection. You will be punished if you do something. That's not present moment, that's the future. And when we think about the future, about some possibilities, some possible consequences, and we are not focused on the present moment, that future events mostly never happen. So our life is consequently detached from the reality of the present moment. And actually, in my personal experience, the present moment has all the potential we need in our life. So it doesn't matter if it's from the religious or any other view. So that's my intro. What do you think from your perspective, Robert?
Well, I believe that fear is very important in religion. So Jews are commanded to fear God in Deuteronomy 10:20. The verse says, "You shall fear the Lord your God, worship him and cleave to him and swear by his name." Likewise, Deuteronomy 28:58 says, "If you do not observe to fulfill all the words of this Torah, which are written in this scroll, to fear this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God." So those are the Jewish obligations. Likewise, Rabbi Weiner explains in the Divine Code, 2nd edition, page 268, that Gentiles are commanded to fear and honor God. And this is included in the Torah's prohibition of blasphemy. The connection is logical, I believe, because if you fear God, you will not commit blasphemy. Likewise, there was a famous rabbi, Eliezer, who taught his young son. He told him, "My dearest son, never fear anyone or anything except the Holy One, blessed be He." So in Judaism, fear of God liberates people from other fears. we do not have to fear idols. We do not have to fear the myths of men. We do not have to fear hell. We only have to fear God.
I find it quite interesting. Actually, many other religions also have some kind of fear built in. What I find the purpose in religious views or religion is only to guard old teachings from being challenged, or keeping the same mindset or stereotypes given by some higher being, God or whatever. And what I find quite challenging is the purpose, which is sometimes misusing that fear from God to manipulate people's minds and actions. That's not just in religion, that's also in politics, in family and everywhere. In politics they say, oh, this party will do this, then we need to fear that consequences. So in my opinion, that is the old concept of living life using fear. Means with imposing fear on people, we keep them obedient. But I believe that over time we will overcome this, and how our consciousness and knowledge elevate, we should switch from fear to knowledge and insight. So living not from the fear, but from knowledge and insight. And in my personal experience, they produce better results than fear. Because I
believe there is no contradiction between knowledge and fear. On the contrary, if you know that God controls the entire universe with infinite power, I think that fear is a natural reaction. I do not find the contradiction between knowledge and fear.
But fear from, you said the God, the fear is natural. Fear from what? So when you connect God and the universe and everything, you think fear is inbuilt in us by God?
God certainly gave us a capacity to fear. That is certainly true. And as I mentioned, if you believe that God controls the entire universe with infinite power, I do think that fear is a natural and healthy reaction. You mentioned that... You mentioned that you hope that society will overcome fear. Do you think that's possible when it comes to innate emotion like fear?
I think it's possible, because I've seen it in many individuals. When your knowledge and your personal insights overcome religious beliefs or any stereotypes, you feel free from those religious beliefs, and then that fears die. Because if the God is almighty, and even if the God is that one who gave us life, wouldn't he, and especially free will, right? Why would God impose some kind of trigger of fear to control our free life, our free will? So, in my opinion, and I lived that, I lost any fears because I lost the concept of sin. Since I elevate my knowledge and insights, I lost that concept of sin. I lost the concept of guilt and feeling guilty. Therefore, I lost the fear. So I live my life from myself, from my experiences, and my choices are even better than when I was fearing some consequences from teachings from Christianity or something like that, because now I understand then that my consequences can produce some let's say bad my actions can produce some bad consequences to other people or to the nature or animals or whatever, and from my knowledge and insight I don't do that. Not from the fear of being punished or being committing sin or something like that. So in my when I start transition from fear-based Christianity, my first phase was to explore religious beliefs without fear. So that was not the...
Okay, but in Christianity, fear is usually focused on hell. So Christianity doesn't necessarily focus so much on the fear of God as much as on the fear of eternal hell, right? So in Judaism, there is no hell. There is a purgatory, right? So there is a purgatory in Judaism, but there is no obligation to fear purgatory because it is a created thing. And in Judaism, there is no obligation to fear any created thing.
It's okay, it's just different belief. My general insight is that living from the knowledge and personal experience and insight give us broader horizons and open new dimensions. If you keep focusing on religion, that religious beliefs get new dimensions. And I consider that like a spiral of growth. So when your horizons broaden and your insights and knowledge elevate, you are kind of in the spiral of growth. But fears, in contrary, can produce just the spiral of downfall, because fears often result in violence. So when I'm afraid of something, I need to impose my strength or my defensive mode or even more fears to keep myself from something which is actually imaginable. So that fears are not real, what we are talking about, religious fears. So from my concept and my point of view, even if people in religious mindset explore life without fearing of God or consequences or whatever, that can produce astonishing results and insight into the spiritual world, like a self-discovery, maybe understanding the world and our existence in different way, which also, if you keep it in religious, from religious point of view, that elevates and transforms religion, not just from teaching, but to one personal experience. And I believe that fear is the one element which keeps people detached from that personal experience.
I remember there was a famous American horror writer called Howard Phillips Lovecraft, who wrote a very long essay called Supernatural Horror in Literature. And in that essay, he explores the psychological origin of fear and the historical origin of fear, right? So at the beginning of the essay, he mentions that the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And then he continues by explaining that fear and religion are closely related. So I have to agree with him. I do have to agree with him that fear is so old and so powerful an emotion that as a scientific fact, it must be permanent within the human soul. I do not think that we can ever truly overcome at least the basic capacity to fear, regardless of where it is directed to, right? So I believe he gave a very good insight, and I will have to agree with him that fear is more or less permanent when it comes to the human species.
I believe that his concept is based on his level of view. But in my perspective, from my perspective, I differ from fear, which is natural fear, built in in the moment of our birth, or the fear imposed through education, family, society, religion, or whatever. Because mind, that's just proves that our minds are so powerful that even if we imagine consequence which is not present, so that's imaginable. Maybe one Croatian writer, I think Ivo Andrić, said, "Oh my God, I had so many fears, but most of them never materialized." So if you keep living from the fear, living your life from the fear, whatever perspective you take, either religious or just life, I believe that can produce many psychological effects and problems. when you get rid of fear, that doesn't mean you just drop all constraints. Yourself, your inner self, still has constraints, especially if you are you get rid of your concepts of danger, and everybody is danger to me, or whatever, this nation is dangerous, this religion is violent. If we get rid of that concept and lower our perception to person-on-person basis, then most of those fears just vanish, because they are fears from the mind, fears imposed by concepts of the mind. They are not real, in my opinion. That's my perspective.
Well, I fear God. I fear God. He terrifies me, and my fear of God is very real. Why?
Don't you believe in yourself that you will
because my fear of God is very, very real to me, and I also had some personal experiences in my life which I interpreted directly as God's punishment. So I have no desire to revisit those situations again.
But that's your interpretation. Don't you think that God wants you to give your best, and He expects the best from you without fear? Don't you believe in yourself that you can be the best variant of yourself without fear, and serve God in that way?
Philosophy aside, when it comes to practical Torah law, no. So I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that Gentiles are commanded to fear God. So a commandment is not something which is open to, in Judaism, a commandment is not something which is open to rationalizations and excuses and this and that. So as a matter of practical Torah law, I am commanded to fear God. How I evoke that emotion within myself is a different story. There is room for personal, either for intellectual comprehension or through personal experiences. So how I arrive at that fear is my own personal thing. But there is definitely a commandment in Judaism to fear God. So there is no way to remove fear from Judaism. Fear is the very basis of Judaism when it comes to proper emotional attitudes toward God.
So actually you live your free will, choosing to limit your free will but by Jewish commandments. That's also nice. That's your choice, right? You made a...
Well, the Noahide commandments are not Jewish commandments, so they are commandments for Gentiles, as I mentioned. So I don't necessarily think. Of course, Judaism teaches that everything is in the hands of a person. Everything is in the hands of God except for fear of God, right? So you do have to make a conscious and willing and intentional decision to, follow God's commandments and to fear Him. And God does not force you to follow His commandments because He gave you free will, right? But in my opinion, in my experience, fearing God produces better outcomes than disobeying Him and not fearing Him.
Of course, I believe so. That's your experience. I feel very good without fear and without those concepts, and I feel that I'm living the best of myself at the moment. So that's also I can say that from my personal perspective, even living without fear of God, I feel myself that I'm the best variant of myself at the moment, without fear and sin and all that concepts. But that came, of course, later after living through those fears and overcoming them with knowledge and insights. That it's not just about letting fear go and then going wild. It's about gaining knowledge and insights, and from that perspective, some fears can die. If some fears keep people in check, that's also okay. But the concept is, of course, open to change, and as I said in the middle, the knowledge will make us free.
Okay, Mario, thank you for sharing your fears and thoughts with me.
Thank you too, Robert. It was very interesting today.
Yes, it was. And we are godless Judaism.
We discuss atheism, religion, and everything else.